go.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is the Professor, Derek Craig Stevens, coming to you live for our Season 5 kickoff of The Professor Speaks. Joining us lately will be my normal co-host will be Mr. Brendan Boylan. Right now, Brendan is calling a game at his university, Gardner-Webb. Go Gardner-Webb Running Rebels. I think that's the nickname for them. Hope they're doing well. And Brendan will be with me here in his second season. He's a tremendous talent, unbelievable. He's like my son, and so I'm so proud to have Brendan again in his second season. And he's getting more gigs and more requests for his services. So look for him to be coming, once he graduates, to be a phenomenal sensation. Look for him to be on ESPN, ABC, NBC, and all those great things, because he's just a phenomenal talent. And I'm so honored to have him. Shout out to his mom, who introduced me to Brendan, Ms. Lisa, and hope all is going well. She's a nurse. And so shout out to her and the family, and I thank God, Ms. Lisa, for you and your husband having a great son such as Brandon. Well, let's get to it. It is Season 5 of Professor Speaks. I am so honored coming back to you guys for this 5th season. We started in 2012 with this show, and I want to thank all the contributors over the years, Ty Beasley, Frank Jones, Dwayne Pierce, and all of those, Doc, Derek Williams, and all of those. And all of those guys will be coming periodically throughout the season, as time prevents for them to be able to be with us. So tonight, I just wanted to do a really short show because Kyle T and the Saints News, Jules, Brendan, myself, Sharita, Diva, myself, and Remy, we had a great show. They covered a lot of material. And then the coach's office with Rick, Coach Rick, and who's our football dad, phenomenal job. If you did not listen to those two shows, I really, really urge you Saints fans to go out there and replay and listen to those shows. I mean, really a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, and really in-depth coverage and comprehensive coverage of our Saints. I say this to Kyle privately, and I'll say it publicly. I am very proud of what we do here at Saints News Radio and our network and what we do in providing Saints material to you guys, the listeners. The response and the feedback has been overwhelming between Twitter and Facebook. We're almost approaching 40 to 50,000 people connected with our network, and so we thank you all in the South Central, the Gulf Coast, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and all the Who Dat Nation members all over the world that are unable to hear WWL or the other stations and can go on the internet and listen to us. So we take this job and this role and this company very seriously, and we are very proud of the material that we reveal and discuss. We speak the truth. We deal with the facts. We don't tear down people, but we give you the truth and the facts. And we try to just give you honest reporting, not to BS you, not to pull a wind over your eyes or do any of that stuff. We come honestly, and we come most importantly with integrity. Integrity. That is our main focus, to have integrity. So we thank all of you, especially the city of New Orleans and in Baton Rouge, and our prayers are still with all of our family and friends who are still trying to recover from the floods that devastated Louisiana and the southeast region and all the way over from Lafayette, New Iberia, Lake Charles. Our prayers are continuing to be lifted up to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for your recovery. We know what that's all about because we went through Katrina in New Orleans with a lot of our family members, and I had personally a lot of family members that live in Baton Rouge and in Ascension Parish. And so thank God, that they were spared, but it does not take away the pain from others who did suffer a loss. So our prayers are continuing to be with you. Want to do a little shout-out for those of you that need encouragement. Check us out every Sunday night with the elect lady, Pastor Mildred Darlene Simpson, and as well as Life Experiences, Sunday night prayer and biblical study with me and my family and extended family members. We record that live some Sundays. So if you need words of encouragement, please go out to realwalknetwork.com and check it out. Don't forget to check out Dispersion Radio with also Minister Terrence Johnson. So we do 2 different type of disciplines on this internet network company that Colin and I are running. We have the sports side, but we have our most important side, which is the encouragement to uplift people in terms of spirituality with the Real Walk Network. All right, so check us out. Tonight's show is going to be sponsored by 3 sponsors: New Orleans Arts Media Institute, as well as Feather Me Pretty, LLC, and Biz Cash Fast LLC, and DCS Consulting Services LLC. We'll get to some commercials and talk about all these companies throughout the program. Well, September the 11th. First of all, we want to make sure before you go to these games, take some time to get on your knees, take some time to say prayers, because September 11th, Sunday, is not a great day in this nation. It's not a great day for 3,000 people whose family members are still alive. 3,000 plus people died in New York and Washington, D.C. due to a terrorist act that occurred here back 15 years ago. So before you go to those games and get caught up in football, you have to remember and put football in its place. Football, at the end of the day, is only an entertainment in terms of sports. Please take the time to say a prayer, because whenever September 11th comes, for many Americans and many of the family members that were tragically impacted by this dastardly deed that occurred, it's not a great day. So before you go out to the games, Who Dat Nation, and to all the NFL listeners that are listening to my voice, please take some time to pray for our nation, pray for the victims, the family members that lost victims, the victims that survived, that were able to run out in time. That day brings back memories that are not so great. So just take some time in prayer and lift up those that they can be encouraged. And hopefully football can take their minds off the tragic event that occurred 15 years ago. Okay? So I want to talk to you tonight real quickly about this game. The New Orleans Saints will be hosting the Oakland Raiders. Well, before I get started into what I call the Tonight Show, is just simply going to be titled Keys to Victory and Matchups. I just finished watching some of the Raiders a few minutes before we went live on the air, and I got to be honest with you, I was not impressed. And partly why was because of the opponent they were playing was pretty good. The Minnesota Vikings had a great defense. But what I just witnessed to them, and once I did my research today on this team had a very similar track record as the Saints last year. They were 4-4, and they went in round weeks. I guess it would be like weeks 7, 8, and 9. No, 6, 7, and 8. Let me backtrack. 6, 7, and 8. They had an offense outbreak for 3 weeks where they really did well. But at the midway point of last season, 2015, the Raiders were 4-4, just like the Saints. And then, just like the Saints, they collapsed in the second half of the season and went 3-5, just like the Saints. They went 3-5. What the difference was, the Saints played in the fourth quarter of the season, which are the last 4 games. The Saints went 3-1. So when I looked at the game, I said, let me see what all the hype is about. The Raiders are improving, or on the right direction, the right track. And they are, compared to Raiders teams in the past. They are. But when I looked at the game, I noticed a couple of things. One of the things with Khalil Mack, he is a great player, and he is. But what brought him to prominence so quickly was the game in which he had the 5 sacks. In this game I watched him, in which the Minnesota Vikings do not have the same type of offense as the Saints, the Minnesota Vikings literally could have had 21 points in the first half had it not been for a sack and a drop-in touchdown by Kyle Rudolph in the end zone. Minnesota was leading 10-0 instead of minimally 17, maximally 21-0. The Raiders' defense could not stop them at all. They went up and down the field on all 3 of their drives that they had. They forced a interception on Derek Carr, and I was like, I don't see what everybody was talking about with the Raiders. But now, in all fairness, that was just 1 quarter of 1 game of a 16-game season. So I say all of that to say that this is a winnable game that the New Orleans Saints simply have to win, must win, to get their season on track. With the New Orleans Saints being 0-4 in preseason and now having lost 9 straight preseason games, it is imperative that this losing streak be broken, preseason or not. You've got to, with young players, you've got to pick up a winning spirit very quickly. Otherwise, with young players and the morale of the team can greatly be, destroyed or broken if you come out losing. So this is a game that the Saints really, really can win and should win. I'll be very honest with you. So let's go into talking about some of the keys, that will make it possible for the Saints to win this game. And before I go into that, let me backtrack. I want to remind everyone, if you did not miss the thrilling game on last night in which the Denver Broncos eked out a 1-point win over the Carolina Panthers by a score of 21-20. The Carolina kicker missed a 50-yarder game winner at the end of the game, something about playing in that altitude up there, and Denver was able to prevail. Denver was trailing 17-7 at one point in that game. And the Carolina defense did not look the same in terms of their rush defense. C.J. Anderson had nearly 100 yards rushing on them. And see, this is one of the things I was telling people a lot about week 1 of football and even some parts of week 2. You're going to see a lot of upsets week 1 and week 2 because teams are still kind of in a preseason mode. They still have not gotten totally comfortable with, the pads and all of that week in and week out. And then a lot of starters did not play a lot during preseason, to prevent them from injury. So you're going to see a lot of that this week in the NFL on Sunday and Monday with the games. And we're going to pick some games towards the end of the program. Now, getting back to the matter at hand, the New Orleans Saints. And so I want to take some time and go over, let me pull up my notes, some of the things I want to talk to you about on tonight in terms of keys to victory for the New Orleans Saints. Well, I believe this game, most importantly, is going to be won in the trenches. In the words of Frank Jones and Kyle Mosley, the trenches, offensive line, defensive line. So since we are reporting on and supporting our team, the New Orleans Saints, I'm going to give you a more in-depth approach in terms of the Saints. From the New Orleans Saints perspective with the offensive line, it is going to be very, very imperative that Street, who will be up against Khalil Mack, that he's able to get some help on that side with either Jari Evans or a tight end. Human is gone for the year, and the gentleman Chris Manhurst is now the tight end that will be replacing Human. So it's going to be imperative that Zach Street gets some help because all of you are aware of how atrocious the Saints offensive line looked in this preseason. They simply looked atrocious. Let's hope that that does not transcend into week 1's matchup against the Raiders. Now, Jari Evans, the rule of the matter is with Jari, he knows the Saints system. He's back with the Saints. Unfortunately, the Saints suffered at guard play. So hopefully Jari Evans has enough, left in the tank that he can come in and provide, some strong play. I understand he's in great shape. He came back healthy. I understand things did not work out in Seattle for him in terms of the scheme. There's a lot of questions about how Seattle's line is relatively weak. So, whether or not Jari couldn't make it there, what type of player will he be? I just think a lot of times with players, it's the schemes that they go to in the systems. All systems are not a good fit. You may be an all-pro at one team, and you may be a backup on another team because the adjustment, even Darrelle Revis, when he went to the Buccaneers, did not look the same. So not all teams are a good fit. A lot of times these players be great on one team. It may not work out on another. So we're glad to have Jari Evans back. I feel much more comfortable with Jari playing in that position than what we had before. So Jari and Zach Street are going to be the keys on that right side. Now, what is even more of a big issue now is developing on this left side. Okay, now Tyron Armstead is still struggling with injury. At the last report, he has been out in practice. So he's still trying to recover from his knee injury, soft tissue issue, and the things he have complexing him. So now we're going to have to watch Tyron against Aldon Smith. What is key on the Raiders defensive line are Aldon Smith and Tyron Smith, as well as Justin and the other gentleman, Dan Williams, that fit up the middle. These are some big guys that sit in the middle on the Raiders' front four. The strength of the Raiders' defense is their front four. So now you got Aldon Smith, the former San Francisco 49er, that may be going up with a somewhat not 100% Tyron Armstead. So that could lead to some problems in terms of Drew having time to throw. So it's going to be important that Zach Street and Tyron Armstead, we keep an eye on them to see their play, because